around because, you know, you got local TV stations, etc., editing together footage to talk about the season about to start. And there was a video out there, and part of it, I guess Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White hugged each other. Guys, that means nothing. Do not let people blow smoke up your ass. That makes them best. Guys, Caitlin Clark.
Pay attention to what he's about to show you, because what you're looking at isn't just bad marketing, it's a deliberate pattern. The Indiana Fever just spent 3 consecutive days promoting their upcoming season across social media, dozens of posts, hundreds of thousands of impressions, and the most popular player in women's basketball history was systematically excluded from nearly every single one of them. We're talking about a franchise that sold out arenas last season because of one player. And they're pretending she doesn't exist.
And prior to that, and by the way, I mean, since I didn't see anything on these two things, Caitlin, didn't see anything on this, no here, whatever this is. And then there was a couple of, no. I mean, guys, you saw Caitlin right here. You saw Caitlin right here because there was some pictures of workout footage. Then the 1 year Hawkeye thing, and then this. And then this. But prior to that, look at this. No Caitlin. No Caitlin. What are we doing?
Here's the timeline, May 2nd, 2025. The Fever are pushing ticket sales hard, post after post promoting the roster, highlighting players, and building excitement for opening night, and, as he just documented, Caitlin Clark appears in exactly 2 posts during that entire promotional blitz. Meanwhile, Kelsey Mitchell gets featured 4 times. Lexi Hull gets 3 dedicated posts. Even bench players are getting more promotional real estate than the player who generated 3.2 million viewers for playoff games last season. This isn't an accident. Marketing departments don't accidentally forget their biggest draw. They don't accidentally exclude the face of their franchise from ticket sales campaigns. This is a choice, and when you look at the broader context of what's happening with this organization, it becomes impossible to ignore. To blow an opportunity like this is crazy.
I've seen a franchise blow an opportunity like this. This is crazy. This is beyond wild. It'd be like the Bulls or the Celtics or the Lakers not trying to maximize Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird entered the league. David Stern knew there was an opportunity right there. David Stern knew there was an opportunity right there and seized on it. The finals went from being on tape delay after the local news went off to turning into what the NBA is today. And then Michael showed up, and it really...
David Stern understood something fundamental about professional sports. When Magic Johnson and Larry Bird entered the NBA in 1979, the finals were being broadcast on tape delay, music, after the local news. Tape delay, the championship series of a major professional sports league, was considered so unmarketable that networks wouldn't even show it live. Stern recognized the opportunity standing right in front of him and seized it. He built the entire modern NBA on the backs of those 2 players, then supercharged it when Michael Jordan arrived. That's what competent leadership looks like. You identify your generational talent, and you build everything around maximizing that opportunity. You don't hide them. Music, you don't downplay them. You certainly don't exclude them from your marketing materials during the most critical ticket sales period of the year. The Fever are doing the exact opposite. They have a once-in-a-generation talent who single-handedly transformed their franchise from irrelevant to must-see television, and they're actively working to push her to the margins. The question isn't whether this is happening anymore. The evidence is overwhelming.
Just a little compression on the leg. I mean, I don't know. Leg sleeve.
You know what's wild about that? She said, I don't know, a little compression on the leg. And unfortunately, the Fever had put Caitlin Clark in this position because they won't tell us what's really going on. You got Stephanie White making jokes about it's a fashion statement. It looks really cool, doesn't it? Somebody get me Mark Jackson on the phone. This team needs a coach. This is why I said bring in people from the NBA to run this franchise. Larry Bird is the president, Mark Jackson as the coach.
Now, we need to talk about the injury situation because what's happening with Caitlin Clark and Lexi Hull isn't just concerning from a basketball standpoint, it reveals something deeply troubling about how this organization operates. Caitlin showed up to Media Day wearing a leg compression sleeve. When reporters asked about it, she gave a vague, non-answer about compression and moved on. Stephanie White, the head coach, made a joke about it being a fashion statement. A fashion statement? Your franchise player is wearing medical equipment, and the head coach is making jokes instead of providing transparency. This is the same organizational approach that turned the Fever into a MASH unit last season. Remember the parade of injuries, the constant lineup changes, music, the complete lack of clarity about who was actually hurt and how seriously. They're doing it again right now, before the season even starts.
How's the hamstring, and do you anticipate playing Saturday?
Yep. We'll see how much I get to play, but definitely feel good, feel ready to go.
Is it just tightness, or can you describe it as just the nature of the injury?
Tightness. Yep.
Okay. Boy, that's a great way to lose her for the season if her hamstring's bad. Can you imagine if that thing snaps? It's game over.
Lexi Hull's situation is even more alarming. She's dealing with hamstring tightness. Hamstring. That's not a minor inconvenience. That's one of the most dangerous injuries in basketball because, if that muscle actually tears, music, you're looking at months of recovery, potentially career-ending damage. And what's the Fever's approach? Play her anyway, limited minutes, sure, but she's suiting up for opening night despite admitting the hamstring still isn't right. This is organizational malpractice. You don't play through hamstring injuries. You rest them completely until they're fully healed because the risk of catastrophic injury is too high, but the Fever need bodies on the court, so they're rolling the dice with their players' long-term health. Again, just music, like last season, when Monique Billings and multiple other players were constantly playing through injuries that should have sidelined them.
And I think when you watch professional sport, you see that, across the board. You see it in the NBA, you see it in the WNBA. We've seen it with players in our league too. It's just the way that people and teams play Caitlin is different than they play everyone else. It's the nature of her skill set, of what she brings to the table, and it's really the ultimate compliment. And so in order to alleviate how hard she has to work on every single possession, it's important to get her off the ball sometimes. When you think about what are the ways that you can rest while you're on the floor, that's one way. Now you get it, not 94 feet away, but what's half of 94? My math's not all that great, but 40-something, 30-something feet away from the rim. I mean, it's better. And even better if it's second or third side of the floor when we've got a little bit of a rotation. And, this is, I know people are freaking out about this thing. It's not an all the time thing either. It's just, it's a way to help her load management. It's a way to help alleviate some of the extra stuff that's put on her shoulders throughout the course of a game.
Listen carefully to how Stephanie White justifies playing Caitlin Clark off ball. She frames it as load management, a way to give Caitlin rest while she's still on the floor, and, on the surface, that sounds reasonable. Elite players in the NBA do play off ball sometimes to conserve energy, that's true, but here's what White isn't telling you. When Caitlin plays off ball in this system, she frequently doesn't touch the basketball at all during entire possessions. She's standing in the corner. The ball gets swung around the perimeter. Kelsey Mitchell, or another player, takes the shot. And the best player on the court, the player defenses are designed to, stop, never even gets an opportunity to impact the play. That's not load management. That's wasting your best asset. Go back and watch games from last season. Count how many possessions Caitlin spent off ball where she never touched the basketball. It happens 8 to 12 times per game, sometimes more. That's not a rotation strategy. That's a coaching philosophy that fundamentally misunderstands how to maximize elite talent.
Get that. and everybody's noticed this. Oh, but we're going to try to spin it so it looks like we're doing this for injury prevention. Well, is there an injury that we're trying? I mean, is she injured? And you're trying to prevent it from getting worse? Because you can't, athletes can't take the floor or the field hoping not to get injured or thinking about not getting injured, because that's a great way of getting injured. What are we doing? Sometimes it would be different if somebody could set up a shot for Caitlin or any. It just doesn't happen. I mean, we sat there and she's standing in the corner. Nobody can give her the ball to shoot a three. I see it like 4 times a game. It's weird. Ball gets passed around. I'm like, how is the best player on the court not touching the ball during that possession? And it won't just be 1 or 2.
And here's the part that reveals what's really going on. Watch Stephanie White's body language when she talks about this. Watch how she frames the explanation that she's not talking about maximizing Caitlin's effectiveness. She's talking about alleviating the burden on her, about giving other players opportunities, about spreading the offensive load around the roster. That's the language of a coach who thinks her best player is a problem to be managed, not an advantage to be leveraged. Compare that to how elite NBA coaches talk about their superstars. Steve Kerr didn't talk about Steph Curry as a burden that needed to be managed. He built an entire offensive system designed to get Curry as many high-quality touches as humanly possible. Eric Spoelstra didn't view LeBron James as someone who needed rest through off-ball possessions. He created actions specifically to put the ball in LeBron's hands in advantageous positions. That's the difference between championship-level coaching and what's happening in Indiana. Championship coaches view elite talent as the music solution. The Fever coaching staff views Caitlin Clark as a complication that requires careful handling. And that philosophical difference explains everything we're seeing, from the off-ball possessions, to the marketing erasure, to the organizational culture that seems determined to prove they can succeed without fully committing to their generational talent.
All right, Black and White Sports supporters. Well, we're going to talk about the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark and Lexi Hull. Are we doing injuries? Are we doing the Indiana Fever Hospital MASH unit?
Here's what makes this entire situation so maddening. The Indiana Fever had a blueprint handed to them. They didn't have to figure this out through trial and error. The NBA already showed them exactly how to handle generational talent. David Stern showed them in 1979. The Bulls showed them with Jordan in the 80s and 90s. The Lakers showed them with Magic and Kobe. You identify your transcendent player. You build everything around maximizing their impact, and you ride that wave as far as it'll take you. Instead, the Fever are doing something I've genuinely never seen before in professional sports. They're actively working against their own best interests. They're hiding their biggest star from marketing materials during the most critical sales period. They're running offensive schemes that minimize her touches. They're employing a head coach who publicly frames that star as a burden rather than an advantage, and they're doing all of this while the entire basketball world watches in complete bewilderment. Think about what they're leaving on the table. Last season, Caitlin Clark generated the highest television ratings in WNBA history. Her playoff games drew over 3 million viewers. Her jersey outsold every other player in the league combined. Arenas sold out months in advance just for the chance to see her play. She created more mainstream media coverage for women's basketball than the previous decade combined, and the Fever's response to all of that success is to systematically reduce her visibility and limit her offensive role. The Iowa preseason game last year was a perfect example. Massive turnout, incredible atmosphere, generated enormous goodwill and media attention. It should have immediately become an annual tradition. Every single preseason, the Fever should play one game in Iowa to maintain that connection with Caitlin's college fan base and keep that pipeline of support flowing. Instead, they treated it like a one-off experiment. No announcement about making it annual. No commitment to building on that success, just another missed opportunity in a growing list of organizational failures. Now, let's talk about what this means for Caitlyn's future in Indiana. Because if you're her, if you're watching your franchise systematically erase you from marketing materials while running offensive schemes that minimize your impact, how long do you stick around? Her rookie contract runs through the 2026 season. That's 2 more years after this one. And while WNBA contracts don't offer the same flexibility as NBA deals, players do have options. They can request trades. They can make it clear they won't re-sign. They can create enough organizational pressure that teams have to respond. And here's the thing about Caitlin Clark specifically, she doesn't need the Indiana Fever. The Fever need her. If she decided tomorrow that she wanted to play somewhere else, there would be a bidding war involving every single franchise in the league. Teams would mortgage their entire future for a chance to build around her. She has leverage that most WNBA players never get. The question is whether she'll use it. Watch how she handles the next 2 seasons. Watch for the subtle signs of frustration, the carefully worded responses to questions about her role, the body language during games when she's standing in the corner watching someone else take contested shots. Those moments will tell you everything about whether she sees a long-term future in Indiana, or whether this is just a temporary stop before she moves to an organization that actually understands what they have. The broader implications here extend beyond just Caitlin and the Fever. This situation is a test case for how the WNBA handles generational talent. The league has never had a player quite like this before, someone who transcends the sport itself and becomes a mainstream cultural phenomenon. Someone who can genuinely move the needle on television ratings, merchandise sales, and arena attendance. The league's entire growth trajectory over the next decade might depend on how well they maximize this opportunity, and right now, the organization that controls that players' rights is completely botching it. They're making decisions that prioritize internal politics over business success. They're allowing coaching philosophies and front office egos to override basic marketing sense. They're treating their most valuable asset like a problem to be managed rather than a foundation to build on. If this is how the WNBA handles its biggest star, what does that say about the league's ability to capitalize on future opportunities? So, here's the question you need to ask yourself: is this incompetence, or is it something else? Is the Indiana Fever front office genuinely this bad at their jobs, or is there a deliberate effort to prove they can succeed without fully committing to Caitlin Clark? Because those are really the only 2 options. Either they don't understand basic sports marketing and player management, or they do understand it and they're choosing a different path anyway. And honestly, I'm not sure which answer is more troubling. What I do, music. No is this: the clock is ticking. Caitlin Clark's patience isn't infinite. Fans' willingness to keep supporting a franchise that, music, disrespects their favorite player isn't infinite. The window to maximize this opportunity is already starting to close, and the Fever are spending that precious time proving they can function without fully embracing what made them relevant in the first place. That's not a sustainable strategy. That's organizational suicide dressed up as independence. So, watch what happens over the next few months. Watch the marketing materials. Watch the offensive schemes. Watch Caitlin's body language and media responses. Watch whether the Fever make any meaningful changes, or whether they double down on this approach, because all of those data points will tell you whether this franchise has any chance of keeping their generational talent long term, or whether we're watching the beginning of the end of Caitlin Clark's time in Indiana. And if you think I'm overreacting, if you think that hug between Caitlin and Stephanie White proves everything is fine, go back and look at the evidence. Look at the systematic exclusion from marketing. Look at the offensive possessions where she never touches the ball. Look at the injury management approach that prioritizes short-term availability over long-term health. Look at all of it together, and then tell me this organization has a plan for success, because, from where I'm sitting, the Indiana Fever are speed running how to waste a generational talent, and we're all watching it happen in real time. Drop a comment and let me know, music, what you think. Is the Fever's approach justified, or are they making a catastrophic mistake? Would you stay in Indiana if you were Caitlin Clark, or would you be counting down the days until you could request a trade? And, most importantly, what does this situation tell us about the WNBA's ability to capitalize on mainstream success? Because those answers matter.